Hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Gary Kendall, and this is a series that we call Mentoring Moments. And in the mentoring moments, we try to probe into the backstage part of a person's life, a leader's life, and to provide support for the things that people often don't talk about. The front stage, everybody sees, everybody knows, everybody has an opinion. But for the backstage, these are often things that don't get discussed. So we're going to discuss them in a safe place, in a positive way, and help us think through some of the things that either can be the best foundation that you would ever build for your ministry, or if we don't address them, they become a crack that could ultimately be the undoing of our ministry. So we're going to shoot for the former, not the latter. Today we're introducing a series that we're calling Unique. A lot of the material I've drawn from Will Mancini in a book that he wrote that's titled the same. But I'd like to give you 4 5-minute segments that talk about things that all of us need to wrestle with and think through in order to be the most effective in ministry. And so let's start with the fact that you are a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. The Bible says in Ephesians 2:10 that you are God's workmanship. And that word workmanship is actually poinia. And poinia is the root from which we get the word poem. So it's almost like God is crazy about you and he loves you so much, he wrote a poem about you. Actually, this poem came to life and you are the poem. And like a good artist, whether it's a musician or a painter, they never do it exactly the same way twice. And so I want you to be free to be you. In fact, what I really hope out of this short segment right now is that you know who you are at the core of your being and you live out of that and what you're called to do. And those two things are very integrated. I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, this will show my age, but as if you couldn't tell my age anyway, this will show my age, but there was a bracelet that was out titled, "What Would Jesus Do?" WWJD. And people were wearing that bracelet. And I had a visceral kind of reflex against that bracelet. And I couldn't figure out why for a while. I thought, well, wouldn't everybody want to do what Jesus would do? I even tried asking myself that question for a while, like, what would Jesus do in this situation? Hypothetically, I think there's maybe some value there. But here's what I decided over time, that I don't need to try to be Jesus. I need to be Gary. My mom is from the South, and they always have 2 names. So my name was Gary Lynn Kendall. Her name is Mary Ruth Kendall. And what I decided over time was I needed to be the very best Gary Lynn Kendall that I can be. I don't need to try to be Jesus in that situation. I'm not God. I'm not omniscient. I don't have all of the mission that he was given, but I have a very important slice of life and work that God's called me to do. And the best thing I can do is bring who God made me to be to a particular kind of opportunity. Sometimes in ministry, we get confused by all the different demands that are on us because people want the pastor to be the best pastor, and they're going to compare the way he speaks or she speaks to anyone else on the internet, which is a big job. And then they want you also to step out of that and be the best counselor if someone has a heartbreak, or when you go in your board meeting, the best leader. And these kinds of expectations can weigh on a person because often I would feel like in my early days, I wasn't living up to that. I felt like I wasn't that best pastor. I wasn't always the best leader. I wasn't even always the best leader in my own family. And there were times I just felt like I was failing on every level. And the problem was I was in this comparison trap. It's a trap. When you fall in that trap, there's no way to win. But a friend of mine said these words to me one day. She is a counselor and a life coach. And she said, "Why don't you ask God what he thinks of you?" And when she first said that to me, I thought, that's an interesting thought. And I began to pray that prayer. God, what do you think of me? Tell me what you think. And what I got out of that was amazing. Like I began to regularly feel inside my spirit that God was saying over me what he said over Jesus when Jesus was baptized and the heavens opened and God says, "This is my dearly loved son in whom I'm well pleased." Now, I had a hard time receiving that, to be honest. Like, I was thinking, I don't feel well pleased with myself. My wife isn't always well pleased with me. My board isn't always well pleased. My church doesn't always grow. But here I hear God saying, "This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased." And the more I leaned into that, the more I began to discover, and it really became a breakthrough in my life, that God loved me just the way I was. He didn't need another person to replicate who Jesus was in that moment in time in that culture. He needed me to be fully me. And I actually had this thought. What if someday at the end of our life, when we stand before God, God doesn't ask us, "Why didn't you do this, this, or this?" What if the question that God asks us is, "Why aren't you more like the you I created you to be?" Like, could we stop the comparison game, trying to be someone else, and just really fully embrace who we are? I love what Acts 13:36 says about David. It says that when David fulfilled the will of God in his generation, he fell asleep. Really small little sentence, but a powerful one, because it basically says, there's a lot of things David did well. There's some things that we wish that places he wouldn't have gone. However, at the end of his life, it was said of David, he fulfilled the will of God for his generation. And I think that would be the highest thing that could be said of any of us. So as we talk about unique, you be the unique you that God created you to be. And may it be said of you and be said of me that at the end of our life, we fulfilled the will of God for our generation.